What began as a simple trip to the store turned into a nightmare. A mother, her 3 daughters, and a stranger who offered help, kindness, and a ride to Walmart. They were searching for a dress. The next day, her daughter would fly across the country to visit her father. Tonight was meant to be about making her feel special. But as the fluorescent lights dimmed and the store approached closing time, everything changed. The man who promised assistance offered to buy the girls a meal. One child followed him. And just like that, she vanished. The cameras kept rolling. The aisles remained busy, but a silent horror was unfolding. By the time anyone realized what had happened, it was too late. This is the tragic story of Cherish Perrywinkle. Cherish Lily Perrywinkle was an 8-year-old girl living with her mother Rain and 2 younger sisters, Destiny and Naya. Born on Christmas Eve in Orlando, her mother always called her the greatest gift life had ever given. After her parents, Rain and Billy, separated, custody battles ensued over the years. But to those who knew Cherish, she was a bright light amid the turmoil. Cherish was full of joy. She loved animals, enjoyed drawing, and spent hours pretending to be a teacher for her sisters. She had just learned to ride her bike and was often seen zipping around outside, carefree and smiling. Her father once described her as the very definition of pure love. On the evening of June 21st, Rain took Cherish and her 2 sisters to a Dollar General store. They were looking for affordable clothes, hoping to find a dress for Cherish to wear the next morning before her flight to visit her dad in California. Money was tight. While Rain quietly shared her concerns with a store employee, someone else was listening. A man lingering nearby noticed the family's vulnerability and saw an opportunity. He approached them in the parking lot. His name was Donald Smith. Donald claimed he and his wife had a $150 Walmart gift card and wanted to help the family. Rain was cautious at first, but Donald spoke softly and warmly. He said he had children too and seemed genuine, almost fatherly. Looking her in the eyes, he assured her she was safe. In that moment of trust, Rain and her daughters got into his van. He drove them to Walmart. For over an hour, they wandered the aisles. Rain and her daughters picked out clothes while Donald stayed nearby, watching. According to Rain, he didn't buy much except one disturbing item, a length of rope. As the evening wore on, the girls grew hungry and restless. Rain was ready to leave, but Donald insisted they get food from the McDonald's inside the store. He gestured toward the front and offered to take Cherish to order while Rain stayed with the younger girls. It was nearly closing time. The McDonald's had already shut down, but Cherish, excited for a treat, skipped behind him. That was the last time Rain saw her daughter alive. As closing time approached, panic set in. Rain searched, frantically. No sign of Cherish, no sign of Donald. Her phone wasn't working. She screamed for help. It took nearly 40 minutes before a store employee gave her a phone to call 911. Despite Rain's reports, police initially treated the case as a missing child, not an abduction. Hours passed, but security footage told the truth. Cameras showed Donald leaving the store with Cherish, calmly walking to his white van and driving away. An alert was issued just before midnight. The vehicle was described as a white Dodge van with white curtains. By 3:30 a.m., Donald Smith's name surfaced. He was a convicted offender, released from prison only 3 weeks earlier. His criminal history was long and disturbing, dating back to 1977. The urgency became clear. Homicide detectives were called in. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement issued an Amber Alert at 4 a.m. At sunrise, a tip came in. A suspicious white van had been spotted behind a church. Officers found Donald alone, soaking wet. Inside the van were items from Walmart. K-9 units were deployed. A police officer's gut told him to search nearby water. Something was wrong. Just 20 minutes later, behind the church, they found her. Cherish's body lay near a creek, partially submerged. Her hair floated in the water, her bright floral dress nearby. she had been brutally assaulted and murdered. Donald was arrested and questioned. He showed no emotion, no remorse. He refused to speak. His past was filled with crimes against children, assaults, attempted kidnappings, manipulations. He had been recommended for civil commitment as too dangerous to release, but somehow slipped through the cracks. Cherish paid the price. Daniel Montfaldi, administrator of the Violent Predator Program, knew the law's demands: identify and treat the small group of predators likely to offend again. Donald Smith was one of them. He had been flagged as a serious threat as early as 1999, just finishing another prison sentence. State officials and psychiatric evaluators agreed. He was high risk and unsafe to release. Donald was sent to a civil commitment facility near Tampa. But somewhere along the way, the system failed. A jury never saw the warnings. He was released. In the years that followed, Smith continued targeting young girls. The risk was real. In 2009, he impersonated a state social worker to access a child named Christina. He made obscene phone calls to her at just 10 years old. He was charged, pled guilty to misdemeanors, and served 14 months. It wasn't a felony, so he was never reevaluated as a threat. His file remained open, but no red flags stopped him. Christina's mother, Stephanie, never forgot him. She called him sick and evil, someone who should never be free. When Cherish was killed just 3 weeks after Donald's release, outrage was impossible to ignore. His criminal record spanned 19 pages. Former prosecutor Rick Alexander said what many in law enforcement knew: this man never stopped. His record was a long, uninterrupted pattern, yet despite all warnings, he kept slipping through. Then came the autopsy. The truth about what Cherish endured was more horrifying than anyone imagined. She suffered blunt force trauma to the head, had been gagged, and strangled so severely her eyes bled. The pain was unimaginable, the cruelty deliberate. When Rain learned the details, she collapsed. An ambulance was called. Donald Smith was charged with first-degree murder, kidnapping, and assault of a child under 12. As the case progressed, Jacksonville felt the weight of it. Hundreds attended Cherish's funeral. Strangers brought groceries to the Perrywinkle home. Nearly 2,000 people signed her guest book. Her story touched hearts far beyond those who knew her. For Rain, the pain was both personal and public. She believed she had been deceived by a man pretending to help. She saw him as a kind stranger, a good Samaritan. That trust was exploited in the worst way. But the nightmare didn't end there. Weeks after the funeral, the state removed Rain's 2 youngest daughters, Destiny and Naa, from the home she shared with her partner, Aaron. The Department of Children and Families launched an investigation into the girls' living situation. Suddenly, Rain was not only grieving her daughter, but fighting for custody of her remaining children. A judge ordered Rain to submit to a drug test. She complied. Her visitation was initially revoked, but later restored. For 2 hours every Monday, Rain was allowed supervised visits with her girls. Still, the fear of losing them permanently loomed. Aaron Pearson, Destiny, and Naa's father, was determined to regain custody. He publicly expressed his love for the girls and promised to protect them. He understood the system needed assurance before reunification. He vowed never to keep the children from their mother if he regained custody. But others had different plans. A social worker named Amy Deckers offered her home as temporary placement for the girls. Soon she began managing a Facebook page advocating for their adoption. Rain felt betrayed. Amy had once been a friend. Amy claimed otherwise, insisting she hadn't worked with Rain in years. The tension between them grew. Even Cherish's older sister, Lindsay, who had moved to Australia, joined the fight. She hadn't spoken to her mother in years, but wanted custody of the girls too. The situation became more tangled by the day. Everyone had their version of the truth, each believing they acted in the girls' best interest. Meanwhile, in jail, Donald Smith remained silent with law enforcement. But behind closed doors, his mouth never stopped. In secretly recorded conversations with his mother, he denied everything. He claimed Walmart had too many cameras for what he was accused of. He rambled, contradicted himself, shifted blame. At times, he said Cherish wouldn't leave him alone. He even tried to say he wasn't attracted to children. But the truth slipped through. He admitted being high and drunk the night he met Rain. He described chaos inside the van and claimed he panicked when Cherish followed him. Then came a chilling admission. He believed the only way out was to kill her. Donald struggled to control the narrative. At times, he sounded like a man unraveling. "I'll never be okay," he said in one recording. He ranted about humiliation and voices in his head. He spoke as if his secrets would die with him, trapped by guilt or pretending to be. He told his mother he needed a simple book on psychiatric disorders, believing his only way out was the mental health route, a calculated path through the courts rather than genuine remorse. But more damning evidence emerged. In 2 separate recordings with fellow inmates, Donald joked about young girls, described them in disturbing detail, and referenced their ages with casual cruelty. The mask slipped completely. These were not words of a man pleading insanity, but a predator fully aware of his desires. Donald pleaded not guilty. His defense argued media coverage poisoned the public, portraying him as a monster. They filed a motion to move the trial, which was denied. Years passed, but the trial remained in limbo. Legal challenges surrounding Florida's death penalty law caused delay after delay. Meanwhile, Rain's personal life unraveled. In 2017, the state announced she had failed to meet requirements to regain custody of Destiny and Naya. The girls were officially put up for adoption and relocated to Australia with their aunt. They started over with new guardians and a new name. For Rain, this was another unbearable blow. She insisted she fought for her girls, but was shut out. She accused the system of taking them unfairly. Rain believed her sister married only to gain custody and hadn't spoken to her in years. The state claimed Rain was given a chance but failed to follow through. The last time she saw Destiny and Na was during a brief supervised visit in March. She promised to keep fighting, and she did. Billy, Cherish's father, had long parted ways with Rain. Their relationship was complicated and filled with custody battles. After Cherish's death, he chose not to take legal action against Rain, though his attorney believed Rain bore some responsibility. Billy said he just wanted to move forward as best he could. Rain struggled to maintain employment. Her name was tied to tragedy. Employers turned her away, blaming her for what happened. Behind her public grief, she battled depression and isolation. But in early 2018, the courtroom doors finally opened. Donald Smith stood trial for Cherish's murder. The world watched. The prosecution began with raw, brutal truth. Cherish weighed just 67 pounds. She spent her final hours in terror. Her death was slow and violent. This little girl was taken from her mother, sisters, and everything safe, dying at the hands of a man who saw her as nothing more than an object. The state's first witness was Rain. She recounted the night, the dress, the dollar store, the hesitation, the van. She told the jury how Donald offered to buy Cherish's dress, how he grew short-tempered when she hesitated at the door, how he assured her she was safe, and what it felt like to search aisle after aisle, realizing her daughter was gone. Rain said she felt foolish for panicking too late, convincing herself she was paranoid, but by then it was over. Then came the hardest question. When Cherish followed the defendant toward McDonald's, was that the last time you saw her alive? Rain nodded. That image, Cherish skipping after the man who would take her life, was burned into her forever. The defense was not silent. They blamed Rain's choices, saying she decided to get into the van. They painted her as careless and irresponsible, suggesting she bore some responsibility for what happened. It was a brutal moment that cut deep. As the trial reached its emotional peak, the courtroom held its breath. Rain had testified. The prosecution laid out their case. The evidence was overwhelming. Then, in a quiet moment that surprised even his own attorney, Donald Smith made an unexpected decision. He told his legal team not to cross-examine Rain. They said he didn't want to cause her more pain, but for most, it was calculation, not compassion. Over the trial, 12 witnesses took the stand, including the officer who arrested Donald, the tipster who spotted his van, and the K-9 officer whose gut led police to Cherish's body. He described walking through brush across tire tracks past a fallen tree and seeing Cherish's small body beneath the surface, her hair floating in the water. The state also called the medical examiner who performed Cherish's autopsy. She showed the jury 26 heartbreaking photos. The injuries were overwhelming. She paused her testimony and the courtroom broke for 10 minutes, but the horror lingered. When she returned, she pointed to wounds, blunt force trauma to the scalp, strangulation injuries so severe they required careful dissection. Everyone felt it. Even the jury, visibly shaken, confronted the inescapable truth. Donald's defense presented nothing in return, no witnesses, no closing argument. For many, it felt like a silent admission of guilt. Then the jury returned. After just 19 minutes of deliberation, the verdict was unanimous. Guilty of first-degree murder, kidnapping of a victim under 13, and assault of a person under 12. The killing was found to be premeditated and part of a felony act. Every box checked, every doubt erased. The next decision was just as heavy: life in prison or the death penalty. During sentencing, more testimony revealed Donald Smith's danger. Carrie Ann took the stand. When she was 13, he tried to kidnap her. She hid in a closet, terrified he would find her, hearing vulgar threats through the door. She survived, but the trauma never left. With the weight of the past and the crime's brutality before them, the jury chose death. The judge confirmed it with finality. Donald James Smith, you have forfeited your right to live among us. You have forfeited your right to life at all. May God have mercy on your soul. For Rain and Billy, it brought justice, but not peace. No sentence could return what was lost. Outside the courthouse, Rain spoke for many. Predators like Donald must never have the chance to do this again. The system must change. 21 days out of jail should never be enough time to find and murder a child. Not everyone agreed with the punishment. Protesters gathered outside, chanting against the death penalty. Jurors also spoke out. One said the trial's images would never leave them. Another said 4 jurors initially considered life imprisonment, but in the end, all agreed Donald Smith didn't belong on this planet. Yet the story didn't end there. In 2021, Donald filed an appeal. The Florida Supreme Court unanimously rejected it, citing overwhelming evidence of guilt. Then, in 2023, nearly 10 years after Cherish's death, the case returned to court. Donald's new legal team argued his original attorneys were ineffective, jury selection flawed, and that he should have been advised to take a plea. The court reviewed the claims, and in May 2024, the judge gave a final answer: no new trial. Donald Smith remains on death row. Cherish Perrywinkle's case is one of the most devastating examples of what happens when predators slip through the cracks and innocent children pay the price. Her name will not be forgotten. Her story must be told. And though her light was stolen, it still shines. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more gripping investigations.